Malik was already dressed, like it mattered. Not for school, not for church, not for pictures, for his violin. He had that same focused look he got when he was about to play, jaw set, shoulders squared, like he was stepping into something bigger than an 11-year-old should have to carry. He'd been talking about this practice all week because his instructor was coming harder on him lately, not in a cruel way, in a you're ready for the next level way. And Malik took that kind of pressure personally, like it was a promise. We'd barely gotten in the door when he went straight to the corner of our living room where the case usually sat, behind the chair. He didn't even take his shoes all the way off, just kicked the heels down, already reaching. His hand hit air. He froze. Then he looked again, like the room might correct itself if he stared hard enough, like the case might appear if he checked from a different angle. He leaned behind the chair, checked the side table, the closet by the front door, places that didn't even make sense. His movements were fast but quiet, the way kids move when they don't want to get in trouble for needing something. I watched him for 2 seconds before my stomach started sinking. "Mom?" he said, and his voice had that careful edge to it, like he was trying not to sound dramatic. "Where's my violin?" I didn't answer right away because my brain did that Detroit mom thing where it starts scanning today like security footage. Did I move it? Did I take it to the car? Did Malik bring it to school by accident? But I already knew, because the last place Malik's violin had been wasn't here. It was at Gloria's house, my mother-in-law's house. The way Malik asked, soft, controlled, told me he already knew too. He just wanted me to fix it. He wanted me to say, "Oh, baby, it's right here," and hand him his life back. "Did you check behind the couch?" I asked, buying a second I didn't deserve. He nodded quickly. "Yeah, and the closet." He didn't look at me when he said it. His eyes stayed on the empty corner like he was trying to keep his emotions from spilling out and embarrassing him. That's the kind of kid Malik is. He doesn't explode, he compresses. I walked over, crouched beside him, and put my hand on his shoulder. "Okay, breathe for a second." He did. One small inhale, one small exhale, like he was practicing calm like he practiced scales. "Mom?" he said again, lower. "Grandma said she was keeping it safe." There it was, the sentence that made the air in the room change, because keeping it safe was Gloria's favorite phrase. She used it the way other people used "God bless you." Sweet, automatic, impossible to argue with without looking like the villain. Keeping it safe meant, it's mine now. I kept my face neutral, even though my chest went tight. "Let's call her," I said. Malik's eyes lifted to mine, and I saw something there that didn't belong in an 11-year-old's face. Hope, mixed with fear. The fear wasn't about the violin, it was about what it meant if Grandma didn't give it back. He nodded once and sat down on the edge of the couch, hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for a verdict. I pulled out my phone and stared at Gloria's name for half a second longer than necessary. Gloria Coleman, my husband's mother, the woman who hugged people with one hand and held them in place with the other. I hit call. It rang twice. Then her voice came through bright and smooth. "Aisha, hey baby." I didn't waste time matching her tone. "Hey Gloria, Malik's getting ready to practice. We need his violin." A pause. Just a fraction of a second. The kind of pause you only catch when you've learned to listen for it. "Oh," she said. "Right." My grip tightened on the phone. "Where is it?" "It's here," she said, like that should calm me down, like here was a safe place simply because she said so. Malik leaned forward, listening. His foot tapped once against the carpet, and then he forced it still. "Okay," I said carefully. "Can we come get it?" Another pause. This one was longer. She started, then sighed like she was the one burdened by the situation. I was going to talk to you about that. My mouth went dry. Talk to me about what? Gloria dropped her voice into that soft, reasonable tone people use when they're about to justify something unforgivable. Aisha, you know I love Malik. That's my grandson. I'm trying to do what's best. I stared at the wall like it might keep me from saying what I wanted to say. Gloria, where is the violin? Aisha, she repeated, and my name sounded like a warning. You don't have to get sharp with me. I turned my head and looked at Malik. He was pretending not to listen now, staring at his hands, but his fingers were moving, tapping out a rhythm like he was trying to stay in control of his own body. I lowered my voice, not for Gloria's comfort, for my son's. I'm not being sharp, I said. I'm being direct. Malik needs his violin for practice. Is it in your house right now? Gloria exhaled, like she was dealing with a child. Yes. Then we're coming, I said. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Aisha, no, Gloria said quickly. Not today. I went still. Why not? Because, she said, and I could hear her smile through the phone, it's being handled. Handled. That word landed like a slap. Handled how? I asked. Gloria's voice stayed sweet. It's not a big deal. Malik can use a student violin for a while. Plenty of kids do. I heard Malik's breath hitch from across the room, just one small sound, like a string tightening too fast. I kept my voice low, controlled. Malik's violin is not a student violin. I know, she said, almost proud. That's the point. My heart started pounding hard enough that I felt it in my throat. Gloria, I said slowly, what did you do? Silence. And in that silence, my mind filled in the blank with things I didn't want to imagine. Not because I didn't believe Gloria was capable, because I did. I just didn't want Malik to have to learn it this way. Aisha, she said finally, calm like she'd already made peace with whatever she'd done, I'm going to overreact, so I'm going to say this once. I did what needed to be done for the family. I couldn't feel my fingertips anymore. For the family, I repeated. Yes, she said. Tanya's kids. My stomach dropped all the way through the floor. Tanya's kids, what? I asked. Gloria clicked her tongue like I was being difficult on purpose. They deserve something nice too. They deserve memories. They deserve experiences. And you know Tanya's been struggling. I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. Tanya Brooks, my sister-in-law, was always struggling in a way that somehow still included manicures, matching luggage sets, and new pictures every week like her life was sponsored. Malik's voice was barely audible. Mom? I turned my back to him so he wouldn't see what was on my face. Gloria? I said, and I could hear the steel slipping into my voice no matter how hard I tried to keep it out. Tell me right now where Malik's violin is. She hesitated, then said it like it was normal. It's gone, she said. I took care of it. The room went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. I stared at nothing, phone pressed to my ear, and felt the exact second my life divided into two parts, before that sentence and after it. And the worst part wasn't even the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was knowing I was about to turn around, look my son in the face, and tell him something had been taken from him by people who were supposed to love him. And I already knew what he was going to do. He wasn't going to scream. He wasn't going to throw things. He was going to get quiet, like he always did. And I understood in that moment that if I let this slide, if I swallowed it the way I'd swallowed everything else since my husband died, I would be teaching Malik a lesson he'd spend the rest of his life trying to unlearn. so I didn't swallow it. I closed my eyes, breathed once, and said into the phone, steady and clear, "Gloria, bring it back, or you're about to find out what I'm capable of." Then I hung up. And when I turned around, Malik was staring at me like he already knew, like he'd heard enough, like his whole future was sitting in that empty corner and somebody had decided he didn't deserve it. I walked to him, knelt in front of him, and before I could soften it, my voice came out honest. "Baby," I said, "your violin is gone." His face didn't change much. That was the problem. He just blinked once, slow, and asked the question that ripped me open. Did I do something wrong? Marcus had been gone 3 days when Gloria showed up with folders. Not casseroles, not extra chairs, not the kind of help people pretend they're offering when they don't know what else to do. Folders. She sat at my kitchen table like she belonged there more than I did, spreading papers out in neat little stacks while Malik slept on the couch with his jacket still on, exhaustion knocking him out harder than grief ever could at that age. "I'll handle it," she said, tapping the top folder with one manicured finger. "You don't need to worry about details right now." That was the first time she said it. Let me handle it. At the time, it sounded like relief. Marcus had been the organizer, the one who remembered dates, bills, passwords, insurance numbers. When he died, it felt like the floor dropped out from under everything at once. Not just emotionally, logistically. Life doesn't pause for grief, it stacks up, and Gloria stepped into that gap like she'd been waiting for it. I know how Marcus liked things done. I raised him. That sentence came up a lot after that. At the funeral, she positioned herself right next to Malik, one hand always resting on his shoulder like a claim. People kept telling me how strong he was, how composed. They didn't see what I saw, the way his eyes kept darting to the casket like he was afraid his dad might disappear again if he looked away too long. Afterward, at the repast, Gloria pulled me aside near the church kitchen. "I'm going to take Malik home with me tonight," she said, already certain. I blinked. "What?" "He needs stability," she said gently, "and you need rest." What she meant was, I decide what stability looks like. Malik stayed with me that night, but that was the first tug-of-war I didn't even realize I was playing. Over the next few weeks, Gloria became a permanent presence. She showed up unannounced with grocery bags, cleaning supplies, opinions. She rearranged my cabinets once while I was at work. When I came home and couldn't find the rice, she smiled and said, "I put things where they make sense." She handled phone calls. She handled paperwork. She handled conversations I wasn't even part of. Every time I tried to assert myself, she wrapped it in concern. "You're still grieving. You're overwhelmed. You should focus on Malik." And every time she said Malik's name, it sounded like an excuse. When it came to Malik's violin, she was especially attentive. "That instrument is too valuable to be in an apartment," she said one afternoon, watching Malik practice in our living room, her eyes sharp. "Detroit weather alone could ruin it." I hesitated. "It's been fine." She shook her head slowly. "Marcus would have wanted it protected." There it was again. Marcus would have wanted. Marcus would have wanted it stored properly. Marcus would have wanted Malik focused, not stressed. Marcus would have wanted me to help. So I let her take it. Not permanently, that's what I told myself. Just for now. She promised it would stay in her music room, temperature-controlled, insured, safe. She even said Malik could come practice there any time. And at first, he did. But slowly the invitations changed. "Not today, baby. Grandma's tired. Later this week. We've got company." And Malik adjusted. He always did. Meanwhile, Tanya's kids, Jaden and Amaya, became the center of everything. They were always at Gloria's house, loud, laughing, running through rooms like they owned them. Gloria loved to tell stories about how spirited they were. "Those kids have energy," she'd say, smiling wide. "You can't keep them still." When Malik sat quietly with his book, she'd pat his knee and say, "You're so easy." Easy. That word followed him everywhere. At family dinners, Tanya's kids got seconds before Malik finished his first plate. At church, Gloria introduced Jaden and Amaya as "my grandbabies," while Malik got, "and this is Marcus's son." Not "my grandson." Marcus's. Like he was a memory, not a future. Malik noticed. I know he did. He never complained, but I'd catch him watching, absorbing the difference, learning where he ranked. One night, months after Marcus died, Malik asked me quietly, "Mom, do you think Grandma likes them more?" The question broke something open in me. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect him from the truth. Instead, I said, "I think Grandma shows love in ways that aren't fair." He nodded like he already knew. By then, Gloria had keys to my apartment, access to my bank's customer service line, and opinions about where Malik should be headed musically. "You don't want to push him too hard," she said once. "Let him enjoy being a child." But she never said that about Tanya's kids. For them, it was always, "They deserve this." Trips, lessons, experiences. When Malik's instructor suggested a regional youth program, Gloria frowned. That's expensive. When Tanya wanted to take the kids to Florida, Gloria pulled out her checkbook. And every time I felt that quiet pressure rising in my chest, that sense that something wasn't right, Gloria would tilt her head and say, "Aisha, let me handle it." I didn't see it then, not clearly. But Marcus's death didn't create Gloria's control. It just removed the one person who'd ever stopped her. And without him there, she didn't just step in to help, she stepped in to decide. What belonged to who deserved what, and how much space my son was allowed to take. I didn't find out about the sale from Gloria. I found out the way people always find out the truth now, by accident, scrolling when I should have been doing something else. It was a Tuesday night. Malik was in his room working through homework, humming under his breath the way he did when his mind was busy but calm. I was on the couch with my laptop open, half paying bills, half doom scrolling, my brain doing that tired split-screen thing. Then Tanya's face popped up. Bright smile, sunglasses, airport lighting. Off to make memories with my babies. #blessed. #family first. I almost kept scrolling. But something in the background made my thumb stop. It wasn't the kids, it wasn't the luggage. It was the caption under the photo Tanya had reposted from Gloria's account. "Worth every penny." I stared at the screen, that phrase echoing in my head like a wrong note. Worth every penny of what? I clicked into the comments without even meaning to. People were congratulating them, talking about how lucky the kids were. One woman from church commented, "That's such a beautiful way to honor Marcus's legacy." My stomach tightened. Marcus's legacy? I scrolled back up, zoomed in on the picture, really looked this time. New suitcases, matching carry-ons, first-class tags visible just enough to notice if you knew what to look for. This wasn't a modest trip. This wasn't, "we saved up." This was money. A lot of it. I closed the app and sat there, heart thudding, trying to tell myself I was reaching, that grief makes you paranoid, that not everything is connected. But my body knew before my brain caught up. I picked up my phone and called Gloria. She answered on the second ring, cheerful as ever. "Hey, Aisha." "Hey," I said. "Quick question." "Sure." "How long has Tanya been planning this trip?" There was a pause. A small one, controlled. "Oh, you know," Gloria said lightly. "Things came together." "With what money?" I asked. Silence. Not the awkward kind, the measured kind. "Why does that matter?" she asked. I closed my eyes. Because Malik's violin has been handled for weeks now, and suddenly Tanya's kids are flying across the country. Gloria sighed, like she was tired of explaining something obvious. "Aisha, don't do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Ask where my son's violin went?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, pressed my hand flat against the counter to steady myself. "Gloria," I said slowly, "tell me right now what you did with the violin." She exhaled. "I told you, I took care of it." "No," I said. "Tell me exactly what that means." Her voice shifted. Less sugar, more steel. "I sold it." The word hit me harder than I expected. "You sold it," I repeated. "Yes." "How much?" I asked. Another pause. 93,000. The room went quiet in that way where everything suddenly sounds too loud. The hum of the fridge, the pipes in the wall, Malik's pencil tapping in the other room. $93,000, I said, like I was trying to make it make sense. "It was appraised," Gloria said. "I made sure of that." "You made sure of that," I echoed, "before you decided it wasn't Malik's anymore." "That violin was sitting in my house, untouched, wasted." My chest burned. "It belonged to my son." "It belonged to the family," she shot back. "Marcus's family." I laughed once, sharp and ugly. "And Malik isn't part of that?" "Don't twist my words," Gloria said. "You know exactly what I mean." I did. What she meant was Malik doesn't get priority. "What did you do with the money?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "I used it." "For what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "For memories," she said. "For experiences. Tanya's kids have been through a lot." "So has Malik," I said. Gloria clicked her tongue. "Malik has you." The way she said it made it sound like a consolation prize. I could feel my pulse in my ears. "You took my son's inheritance," I said, "and gave it to Tanya's kids." "I invested it in family, and frankly, you should be grateful." "Grateful?" I asked. "For what? For you stealing from my child?" "I didn't steal anything," she snapped. "That violin was under my roof." "That doesn't make it yours," I said. "You're being emotional," she replied coolly. "Marcus would have understood." "Don't," I warned. "Don't put his name in your mouth to justify this." Gloria's voice hardened. "You're not the only one who lost him." I swallowed. "No, but I'm the one raising his son." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said the thing that made something inside me go cold. "You should be proud. That money went to family memories." I pictured Malik in his room, practicing on a borrowed violin that never quite held its tune. I pictured his careful hands, the way he'd apologized for needing things. I pictured Tanya's kids laughing in airports, posing for photos, living large on something that had never been meant for them. Family memories. "You don't get to decide that," I said quietly. "I already did," Gloria replied. I hung up. Not because I was done, because I was done listening. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, realizing something that should have been obvious sooner. Gloria didn't think she'd crossed a line. She thought she'd exercised a right. And that meant this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration. She had taken something that wasn't hers, spent the money like it was monopoly cash, and expected me to swallow it in the name of family peace. I turned toward Malik's room. I hadn't told him yet, but I knew when I did, he wouldn't yell, he wouldn't cry, he'd do what he always did. He'd shrink. And that was the moment I understood something with terrifying clarity. If I let this go, it wouldn't end with a violin. It would end with my son learning permanently that his dreams were negotiable. And I wasn't willing to pay that price, not even for family. The rental violin arrived in a hard black case that smelled like disinfectant and old rosin. The instructor dropped it off himself, apologetic before I opened the door. He kept saying things like, "It's temporary," and "This'll do for now," in that careful voice adults use when they know a child has lost something irreplaceable. Malik thanked him anyway. Of course he did. That night, Malik set up to practice the same way he always had. Chair pulled out just enough, music stand adjusted to the exact height, pencil lined up parallel to the edge of the table. He treated that rental like it deserved respect, like the problem wasn't the instrument, it was him. I stood in the doorway and watched. The first note came out thin. Not wrong, just small, like the sound didn't trust itself to fill the room. Malik paused, adjusted his grip, tried again. Better. Still not right. He frowned slightly, then smoothed his face back to calm and kept going. That's what broke me. Not the sound, not the loss, the way he adapted without protest. After 10 minutes, he stopped and lowered the violin carefully into his lap. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "I'm sorry," I said. The words hit me sideways. "Sorry for what?" he said, gesturing vaguely with the bow. "I didn't mean to cause problems." My chest tightened. "Malik, you didn't cause anything." He shrugged, eyes still down. "If I didn't play so much, maybe Grandma wouldn't have thought it was a big deal." I crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt in front of him. "Look at me." He hesitated, then lifted his eyes. They weren't angry, they weren't dramatic, they were careful. "Baby," I said, keeping my voice steady because he needed steady, not rage. "You did nothing wrong." He nodded, but it was the kind of nod kids give when they hear you, not when they believe you. He looked back at the violin. Is it really that expensive?" I swallowed. "Yes." "How much?" he asked. I hesitated, then told him. 93,000. His eyebrows lifted just a little. Not shock, calculation. "Oh," he said quietly. Then after a moment, "So I guess that makes sense." My heart dropped. "What makes sense?" he said. "That Grandma sold it. I mean, I don't want people fighting because of me." There it was, the lesson already sinking in. I felt something inside me tilt, like a shelf that had been overloaded for too long. "Malik," I said slowly, "do you think you're responsible for other people doing the wrong thing?" He shrugged again. "I don't know. Kind of." I took his hands in mine. They were warm, steady, familiar. These were the same hands that had learned finger positions before cursive. The same hands his father had once held and said, "He's got it. He really does." "Listen to me," I said. "That violin mattered because it was yours. Not because of the money, not because of who gave it to you. Because it was part of you." He blinked fast. I continued. If it didn't matter, nobody would have wanted it. That landed. He stared at the floor for a long second, then asked the question that finally cracked his voice. Would Dad be mad at me? I felt the air leave my lungs. No, I said immediately. No, he would be proud of you. For what? Asked Malik. For loving something that much, for working at it, for taking it seriously. He nodded slowly, absorbing that. Then he asked, barely above a whisper, but if it mattered so much, why didn't anyone stop her? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was ugly, because the truth was about me. I sat back on my heels, still holding his hands, and in that moment I saw the cost of every time I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every time I'd told myself, this isn't the hill to die on. Every time I'd swallowed something sharp because I didn't want to look difficult. Malik hadn't learned to be small on his own. He'd learned it by watching me. I should have stopped it, I said softly. His head snapped up. Mom, no. I should have, I repeated. I should have, and I'm sorry I didn't. He studied my face, searching for something. Are you in trouble? I shook my head. No, but things are going to change. He hesitated. Are we getting it back? I didn't promise what I couldn't control. Instead, I said the only honest thing. I won't let anyone teach you that you're optional. Something in his shoulders eased, just a fraction. He picked the violin back up and rested it under his chin. Can I keep practicing? Yes, always. He played again. Still thin, still imperfect. But this time, I didn't hear the sound. I heard the message he was trying to survive with. Don't take up too much space. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Don't be the reason something goes wrong. And as I watched my son try to shrink himself into something acceptable, I felt the last of my hesitation burn off. Because my silence hadn't kept him safe. It had taught him the wrong lesson, and I wasn't going to teach it anymore. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry. Anger burns hot and fast. This was colder than that. This was the kind of alertness that settles in when your body knows something has shifted and it's not safe to look away anymore. After Malik went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the light off, just the glow from my laptop and the streetlight outside spilling in through the blinds. The apartment was quiet in that hollow way it gets when you're the only adult holding things together. I kept hearing Malik's question in my head. Why didn't anyone stop her? I opened the drawer where I'd shoved Marcus's things after the funeral, the place I told myself I'd organize later when I had more space to breathe. Old envelopes, manuals, a few folded notes in his handwriting I couldn't bring myself to throw away. At the very bottom was a thin accordion folder. I didn't recognize it at first. It wasn't labeled, no bright tabs, just worn edges and that faint smell of paper that's been handled carefully for years. I opened it. Inside were copies, appraisals, insurance documents, photographs of the violin laid out on a table, angles captured precisely, scroll, back, label, even a close-up of a tiny mark near the lower bout I remembered Marcus pointing out once, calling it the instrument's fingerprint. My chest tightened. Marcus hadn't kept these by accident. There was a cover page clipped neatly to the front, typed, formal, dated years back, long before he got sick, long before anyone imagined he wouldn't be here to stop things himself. Instrument held in trust. I read it again, then a third time. Held in trust. My hands started shaking as I flipped through the pages, slower now, afraid of misreading something that mattered this much. The language was clear, painfully clear. The violin had never been a gift passed casually through the family. Marcus's father, Malik's grandfather, had placed it in a trust with one purpose: to protect it for the next generation, for Malik. Marcus was named as custodian, temporary, a steward, not an owner. And when Marcus died, custodianship didn't pass to Gloria. It reverted to the trust. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. Trust language isn't poetic. It doesn't care about feelings or family hierarchies or who thinks they're in charge. It's cold, precise, unmoved by guilt trips and church smiles. And it mattered. Because it meant Gloria hadn't just crossed a line. She'd stepped over a legal boundary she didn't even know existed. I kept reading. There it was, buried in the middle like a quiet landmine. Unauthorized sale constitutes misappropriation of trust assets. I whispered it out loud, like saying it might make it more real. Misappropriation. Not borrowing, not handling, not making decisions, taking. I thought about the way Gloria had said it was under my roof. The confidence, the entitlement. She didn't know this folder existed. Marcus had never told her. He'd told me once casually, like it wasn't a big deal. Just in case, he'd said. I don't want anyone getting ideas. I laughed then. Now I understood. I flipped to the back of the folder and found a business card clipped neatly to the last page. Henry Whitaker, Estate and Trust Attorney, Detroit, Michigan. I stared at the name for a long time. This was the part where old me would have hesitated, where I'd thought about how it would look, about what people would say, about how Gloria would react if she found out I was going legal. But I thought about Malik instead, about the way he apologized for existing, about how fast kids learn which dreams are safe to have. I picked up my phone and dialed. Henry answered on the third ring, voice calm, professional. Whitaker Law. I said, "My name is Aisha Coleman. My late husband was Marcus Coleman." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, recognizing. "Yes," he said. "I remember Marcus. How can I help you?" I said, "My son's violin. It was sold without my consent." Another pause, this one sharper. "Sold by whom?" he asked. I said, "My mother-in-law, Gloria Coleman." I heard him inhale slowly. "Did she have authorization?" I said, "No, and I think you know that." He didn't argue. He didn't reassure me with empty comfort. He said, "Do you have the documents?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Good, because that instrument was never hers to sell." The words landed heavy and clean. I asked, "What happens now?" Henry didn't raise his voice, didn't rush. He said, "We recover the asset, or its value, and we stop further misuse." I closed my eyes. Stop further misuse. Not revenge, not humiliation. Protection. When I hung up, I sat there in the quiet and let the weight of it settle. Gloria thought this was about authority. She thought she'd made a judgment call and I'd eventually accept it. She thought family silence was the same as consent. She was wrong. Because this wasn't emotional anymore. It wasn't even personal. It was documented. It was deliberate. And it was reversible. I closed the folder carefully, slid it back into the drawer, and finally allowed myself one clear, steady thought. The violin was never Gloria's to sell, and she was about to find out exactly what that meant. I didn't say anything. That was the hardest part. Not because I didn't want to scream, but because I knew screaming would give them something to push against. Gloria thrived on resistance. She fed on it. If I came at her loud and raw, she'd frame herself as the wounded matriarch, the one being disrespected by a grieving daughter-in-law who couldn't let go. So I stayed quiet, and while I stayed quiet, they got comfortable. Tanya posted everything: airport selfies, hotel mirrors, ocean backdrops that looked like screensavers. Jaden grinning with his arm around Gloria like he'd won something. Amaya asleep on Gloria's shoulder mid-flight, captioned, "My heart." Every picture felt like a receipt, not just of where the money went, but of who it was always meant for. Gloria shared those posts proudly, reposted them with scripture underneath, little reminders about blessings and stewardship and how family comes first when you do things the right way. She stopped calling me entirely. I think she thought the silence meant acceptance. At church, people kept pulling her into side conversations. "You did such a beautiful thing for those babies. Marcus would be so proud of how you're holding the family together." Gloria soaked it in. She dressed sharper, smiled wider, sat straighter in the front pew like the weight of everyone's approval was holding her up. I watched from my seat near the back, Malik beside me, his feet not quite touching the floor. People asked how he was doing. "Oh, he's fine," Gloria answered once before I could. "Kids are resilient." Malik nodded politely like he'd been trained, and I let it happen, not because I agreed, because timing matters. At home, life went on in smaller, quieter ways. Malik practiced on the rental violin every evening, his focus intense, almost stubborn. He didn't complain. He didn't ask about getting his violin back. That scared me more than if he had. One night after practice, he asked, "Do you think Grandma's mad at you?" I shook my head. "No." "Then why doesn't she call anymore?" I chose my words carefully. Sometimes people stop talking when they think they've won. He thought about that, then nodded like he was filing it away. Meanwhile, Henry worked quietly in the background. Emails, requests, paper trails. He told me not to rush. People reveal more when they think the story is over. And Gloria revealed plenty. She started talking about family assets openly now, like the phrase gave her authority. Mentioned selling a few other things Marcus had left behind. Nothing formal, just comments, casual, testing the ground. I said nothing. At church, Gloria gave a testimony one Sunday about sacrifice and obedience. "Sometimes," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere, "you have to make hard choices for the good of the children." The congregation hummed in agreement. Malik leaned closer to me. "She means Jaden and Amaya," he whispered. I kissed the top of his head. "I know." And still, I stayed quiet. Not because I was scared, because I was done reacting.
Silence can be a weapon if you know what you're doing with it. It gave Gloria room to overextend, to believe there were no consequences coming, to start planning bigger, bolder, like the violin had been a successful test run. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was at work. A group text. Gloria had added me back. "Family gathering this Saturday. Dinner after service. Everyone come." No apology, no explanation, just expectation. I stared at the screen, pulse steady, because I knew what that meant. She thought the chapter was closed. She thought I'd swallowed it. She thought the story was hers now. I smiled for the first time in days, because if Gloria wanted the family together, that was exactly where this needed to happen. Then the invitation came, and with it, the moment she'd never see coming. The church basement smelled like baked chicken, lemon cleaner, and perfume layered too thick. That was how you knew it was a fundraiser. Round tables covered in white cloths, folded programs stacked near the door, a banner taped crookedly to the wall announcing the youth outreach drive. Gloria loved events like this, places where people gathered with good intentions and left with half the story. Malik and I arrived right on time. Not early, not late. Right on time says, I belong here without asking permission. Malik wore the navy blazer Marcus had bought him for his last recital. It fit a little better now. He'd grown in the months since his father died. Taller, quieter, more solid in a way that made my chest ache. He walked beside me with his shoulders back, eyes scanning the room, already clocking where we stood. Gloria spotted us immediately. Her smile widened like she'd been waiting. There they are, she said loudly, stepping forward with open arms. My family. She kissed Malik's cheek and squeezed his shoulder. She said, Look at you, so handsome. He smiled politely, just polite. I returned her hug lightly, no tension, no edge. She blinked once, surprised. Gloria wasn't used to calm from me. She liked me emotional, easier to manage that way. Tanya swept in moments later, flanked by Jaden and Amaya like accessories. They were dressed in matching outfits, crisp and bright, like they'd stepped out of a catalog. Tanya's laugh rang out as she greeted people, telling stories about the trip without anyone having to ask. The kids loved the ocean, she said, beaming. Didn't they? Jaden nodded enthusiastically. Amaya twirled once, enjoying the attention. Such a blessing, someone murmured. Gloria glowed. She guided everyone toward the tables, making sure to seat Tanya and the kids front and center. Malik and I ended up slightly off to the side. Not excluded exactly, just not showcased. Which was fine. I didn't come to be showcased. The pastor took the microphone to welcome everyone, talking about community, legacy, investing in the future. Gloria nodded along at all the right moments, hands folded neatly in her lap, posture perfect. When it was time for testimonies, Gloria stood without hesitation. She walked to the front like the room was hers. I just want to say, she began, voice warm and practiced, how grateful I am for family. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. After Marcus passed, I felt called to step in and make sure the children were cared for, that they had joy, that they had memories. Her eyes flicked briefly to Tanya's kids. Tanya dabbed at her eyes dramatically. I believe God honors that, Gloria said, when we put children first. Applause followed, soft at first, then stronger. I clapped too, slowly, once, then stopped. Malik looked up at me, questioning. I squeezed his hand under the table. Then Gloria said something she hadn't planned on saying. And speaking of children, she added, smiling sweetly, we're so proud of Malik. He's been so resilient through all of this. All eyes turned to us. Malik stiffened beside me. He's talented, Gloria went on, musical, just like his father. We all want the best for him. I felt the shift then. Not dramatic, not loud. Just the air tightening slightly, like everyone sensed something unresolved hovering beneath the surface. Music is such a gift, someone said from the back. Is he still playing? Gloria answered before Malik could. Of course, kids bounce back. That word again, bounce back. I took a breath and stood, not abruptly, not with force, just stood. Actually, I said, voice clear, steady, carrying without needing a microphone,
I don't understand. What? Gloria said, completely confused. I know, I said, gently. That's part of the problem. Tanya shifted in her chair. I looked around the room once, making eye contact with faces I recognized, church members, family friends, people who'd watched my son grow up. Malik's violin, I said, was sold without my consent. A hush fell, not shocked, alert. Gloria laughed softly. Aisha, this isn't the time. It is, I said, still calm, because it already happened. Someone whispered, sold? Tanya's smile froze. Gloria's hand tightened around the edge of the podium. This is inappropriate. What's inappropriate is selling a child's instrument and spending the money like it was yours. Now the room was fully still. I could hear the hum of the lights overhead. Excuse me? Gloria snapped. I met her gaze. The violin, Marcus's father's violin, held in trust for Malik. Her eyes flickered, just once. I don't know what you think you're saying, she said, voice rising slightly now. I'm saying, I replied, that the violin was never a family asset, and it was never yours to sell. A murmur spread, low, uneasy. Tanya stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I didn't look at her. I looked at Gloria. And then I said the words that cracked the room open. The violin. The moment the word violin left my mouth, the door at the back of the room opened. Not dramatically, no slam, no pause for effect. Just a quiet, deliberate click, followed by measured footsteps across the linoleum floor. Henry Whitaker didn't rush. He never did. He wore a charcoal suit that looked lived in, not flashy, and carried a slim leather folder under his arm like it weighed nothing at all. He nodded once to me as he approached, the smallest acknowledgement, then turned his attention to the room. I apologize for the interruption, he said calmly, but this is the appropriate setting. Gloria's face drained of color. What is this? She snapped, trying to reclaim control with volume. Who are you? Henry stopped beside me, opened the folder, and removed a single document. My name is Henry Whitaker, he said. I'm the estate and trust attorney for the late Marcus Coleman. A collective inhale rippled through the room. Gloria straightened. Marcus didn't need an attorney. Henry glanced at her, unfazed. Marcus was careful. That landed harder than anything loud ever could. Tanya laughed nervously. This is some kind of misunderstanding. Henry didn't look at her. The antique violin sold earlier this year was held in trust for Malik Coleman. Gloria Coleman was never a trustee, custodian, or beneficiary. Gloria shook her head. That's not true. Henry turned a page. The trust was established by Marcus's father. Marcus served as custodian until his passing. Upon his passing, custodianship reverted to the trust. He held up the document just long enough for people to lean forward. This instrument was not a family asset, he said. It was protected property. The room was silent now in a way that felt heavy, expectant. Gloria's voice wavered. It was in my house. That does not constitute ownership, Henry replied. And the sale? Someone asked quietly from the back. Henry nodded. Unauthorized. That word echoed. Any sale conducted without trustee authorization constitutes misappropriation of trust assets, he said evenly, which is why the buyer has already been contacted. Gloria's mouth opened, closed. Tanya stepped forward. Wait, contacted how? Henry turned his attention to her. The buyer has demanded restitution, full amount, immediately. Tanya's face went pale. That's money's gone. Henry nodded. Yes. A murmur spread. Not gossip, calculation. Gloria's hands trembled as she gripped the podium. This is outrageous. I was acting in good faith. Henry tilted his head slightly. Good faith does not override legal boundaries.
I watched Gloria in that moment, not with satisfaction, not with anger, with clarity. She wasn't embarrassed yet. She was confused.
Because for the first time in her life, authority wasn't responding to her tone. "What does this mean?" she asked sharply. "Right now." Henry closed the folder. "It means," he said, "that you are financially responsible for the return of those funds. Failure to comply will result in further action." "Action?" she repeated. "Yes," Henry said simply. "Legal." The word dropped like a weight. Tanya shook her head. "This is on you," she hissed at Gloria. "You said it was handled." Gloria turned on her. "I did this for your kids." "And now we're supposed to pay for it?" Tanya shot back. Their voices overlapped, sharp and desperate, cracking the image they'd been so careful to maintain. The pastor cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. Henry didn't wait for permission. "There's one more matter," he said. The room stilled again. "Gloria Coleman currently resides in property owned by the trust. Occupancy was allowed under informal agreement. That agreement is now revoked." Gloria's head snapped up. "You can't." Henry held out another document. "Notice of termination," he said. 60 days. The room gasped. Gloria stared at the paper like it was written in another language. "You're kicking me out of my home?" Henry corrected gently. "The home you occupy." The distinction cut deep. Malik shifted beside me, eyes wide but steady. I placed my hand on his knee, grounding both of us. "This is because of her," Gloria said suddenly, pointing at me. "She turned you against your own family." Henry looked at me briefly, then back at Gloria. "No," he said, "this is because you exceeded your authority." Tanya scoffed. "So what, Malik gets everything?" I finally looked at her. He was supposed to get one thing: the violin. Henry gathered his papers. He said, "You have 30 days to return the funds voluntarily. After that, enforcement begins." Gloria sank into her chair, the posture she'd carried for decades collapsing in on itself. The room buzzed now, not applause, not condemnation. Recognition. People were standing, chairs scraped, conversations started in low, cautious tones. The story was already changing hands. Malik leaned closer to me. "Is it over?" I kissed his temple. "The loud part is." Henry turned to leave, then paused beside Gloria. "One last clarification," he said. "The trust will be moving forward without your involvement." She didn't respond. He nodded once and walked out. I stood slowly, feeling the weight lift, not into relief, but into balance. Gloria looked up at me then, eyes glassy, voice thin. "You didn't have to do this publicly." I met her gaze. "You already did," I said. She swallowed. "I was trying to help." "No," I replied quietly. "You were trying to decide." I turned to leave, Malik beside me, his stride steady, his head high. Behind us, Gloria's voice cracked, not loud enough to command, not soft enough to redeem. "This isn't over." I paused at the door, turned just enough for her to hear me clearly. "It is," I said. "You sold what you didn't own." The violin came back to us on a Wednesday afternoon, delivered in a plain, hard case with no ceremony attached. No apology note, no explanation, just paperwork. Henry had warned me it might not be the original. Instruments like that don't always travel back clean once money changes hands. Sometimes they're resold. Sometimes they disappear into collections where ownership becomes a fog of contracts and silence. What mattered was that the trust was made whole. Malik's violin, or one of equal value, verified, documented, protected, was returned to him legally, properly, permanently. When I set the case down in the living room, Malik stood a few feet away, hands shoved into his pockets like he wasn't sure he was allowed to hope again. "You can open it," I said. He hesitated, then knelt, snapped the latches, and lifted the lid. The sound he made wasn't a gasp or a cry. It was a breath. Long, steady, like something inside him had finally unclenched. He ran his fingers along the neck carefully, respectfully, like greeting someone who had been gone too long. That night, he practiced without asking. No checking in, no apologizing for noise, no shrinking. The sound filled the apartment. Not loud, not aggressive, but confident, full, like the music trusted itself again. And so did he. The next time we saw Gloria was at church. She sat 3 rows back instead of the front. No entourage, no lingering conversations after service. People nodded politely, but they didn't orbit her anymore. Power doesn't disappear loudly. It thins out. She didn't approach us, didn't glare, didn't pretend nothing happened. She watched Malik walk past her with his case in hand, shoulders squared, eyes forward, and she said nothing. That was enough. The boundaries were clean now, written, enforced, unmistakable. No more keys to my apartment. No more "let me handle it." No more decisions disguised as concern. Communication went through Henry when it had to. Silence handled the rest. Tanya stopped posting, not because she felt bad, but because the story had turned and she no longer controlled the angle. The trips ended. The praise dried up. Family gatherings got quieter, smaller, more honest. No one announced sides. They just adjusted. Malik auditioned for the youth orchestra that spring and got in. He didn't celebrate with fireworks or bragging. He came home, placed the acceptance letter on the counter and said, "I think Dad would have liked this." "I know he would have," I told him. And this time when he smiled, it didn't look careful. It looked earned. One evening, as he packed his music for the next day, he paused and looked at me. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not letting it go." I swallowed. "I should have acted sooner." He shook his head. "You acted when it mattered." That stayed with me, because forgiveness was never the goal. Safety was. Clarity was. Teaching my son that his dreams weren't negotiable just because someone older decided they were inconvenient. Gloria didn't lose everything. She lost access, and that was the right consequence, because destruction would have taught Malik the wrong lesson too. Instead, he learned this, that silence isn't peace, that love doesn't require shrinking, that when someone takes what isn't theirs, you don't have to scream to get it back. You just have to stand where the truth can reach them. And I did. For him. Every time. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but they matter because boundaries, truth, and protecting our kids always matter. If this story resonated with you, I'd really love to hear your thoughts or your own experience in the comments below. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you haven't already, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss the next story, and hit the like button. It truly helps support this channel more than you know. I'll see you in the next one.